and welcome to the Ministry Chick Network podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Mashburn, pastor, author, and chief encouragement officer of the Ministry Chick Network. This podcast is for women in ministry and leadership who want to step boldly into their God-given calling. Our big idea is simple. When women have clarity in their calling, confidence in their identity, and purpose in their leadership, they can lead with courage and grace, and they don't have to lead alone. So each week, you'll hear real stories, honest conversations, and practical wisdom from women serving in churches, nonprofits, communities, and in everyday life. Together, we'll learn to start with clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with purpose, so you can flourish in your calling and activate the gifts that God has already placed inside you. Today, we're going to be talking to my friend Tammy, and Tammy has a broad background in management, consulting, partnering with organizations to help them grow, impact by focusing and unifying their vision, strategy, and action plans. And throughout her career, Tammy has served on senior leadership teams of Ginghamsburg Church, Willow Creek Community Church, and in addition, she has spent multiple years as a consultant with Vanderbloemen Search Group and the Unstopped Group. Tammy is often requested for specific expertise in executive searching, staffing, structure alignment, change management, strategy planning and execution, executive communications, and client engagement. In her spare time, Tammy, there's no spare time, but in her spare time, Tammy loves to cook, which is enjoyed by her and her husband, Mike, in the Chicagoland area. And they have 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and 3 cats. So the number 3 is kind of a big deal, Tammy. I like it.
Actually, it's expanded a little bit. So from that bio, we actually have 1 less cat, unfortunately, but we have 3 more grandchildren. So there you go.
That's amazing. Very cool. Well, more grandchildren are always welcome. Always welcome. Thank you for being here and just sharing a little bit of your journey. We were talking online before we hit record. We actually had this set up several months ago, and just God's perfect timing, I guess, in being able to talk today. And I really am looking forward to just hearing from you with your experience, the exposure to the different places and organizations that you've been a part of, and just the depth of your ministry experience. I just know that we are in for a treat, and I am personally ready. I've got my pen and paper so that I can take notes and glean from you. So I wanted to dig in today because you've served on senior leadership teams, like I said, in churches and in nonprofits, and now you do consulting with organizations all over the country. Can you share just a little bit of your journey and what God has taught you along the way? Because this is, I believe it's like 30 plus years, right?
It is. Like when you see that long list of things that I did, I mean, really, it's just like, you know how it is. You just follow God's step, and it like your resume gets a little bit longer each step of the journey. So it's probably not as impressive as it really sounds. It's just
it's actually really
it's just following God on his journey. But I've served for well over 30 years in ministry, and God's just taken me on this like wild ride from being a volunteer in the church to being a homegrown staff person in several different, key churches. I did some leadership in a nonprofit organization for a season time, which was really fun and unique, a little bit different from, churches. And, one of the key phrases that I probably said more than anything else back to God is when God called me to do something is like, God, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, this is what, like, you want me to do this, like a real quick story. So my very first ministry role, so homegrown staff person at this church in Ohio called Ginghamsburg Church. I had been in healthcare, been a key volunteer, and then I felt a call to ministry. Wasn't sure what that was all about. Wasn't sure what a woman could do in ministry, quite honestly. So I started taking a few counseling classes. I thought maybe a counselor, even though I thought I would be a horrible counselor because that doesn't fit my personality, but at least maybe it was something that a woman could do in ministry. But along that journey, I got invited into a part-time staff role and then a full-time staff role, and just a jack of all trades, anything that you could think of in the church, from everything from managing the parking lot when it was crazy to leading small groups and that kind of thing. I did over the years, had a super supportive senior pastor. So there came a season of time after I'd been on staff for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, when our executive pastor was going to be leaving, and I got called into a board meeting. And I thought, well, of course, they're going to ask me either to help maybe with the interview process, or to, help them kind of think of maybe who potential candidates would be. And instead, they said, hey, would you consider being the executive pastor of the church? And literally my profound words at that time back to the board was, are you sure? I mean, because it was, I just in my mind, I think, what are they thinking? Because even though I had some hands-on experience, my education didn't match what I would normally think it would be for, that level of a senior leader and things. But, I ended up saying yes, and God took me, on that journey. And it was fun, but I was learning by the seat of my pants. I literally was learning, every step of the way, one step at a time. So that's a little piece of my journey there.
But isn't that kind of the way, especially in my experience, at least in ministry, it's God, are you sure? And then what am I doing here and how am I going to do it? And then you just figure it out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Because what do? You either take a step forward or you run. So, you take a step forward.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, even thinking about that, Tammy, that was like your first step into ministry, right? So that was
back in the 90s. That was a long time ago. Yeah.
That's kind of in my mind. I was like, I bet it's around the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my 90s era. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, that is still kind of not very common.
It isn't, and that's one of the things. I used to go to, meetings, kind of, so because I was on this executive team or whatever, and I would go to some meetings and it would be mostly guys in the room and things. And that was fine. I always felt like I got treated with respect and things. But my hope and my assumption was that, as the years went on, that would change and it would be much more balanced. But I really haven't seen a lot more balance in the world of church. Some, but not maybe as much as I kind of thought at that time, that it would just naturally, gradually change and expand and things. But, yeah.
Well, that's a great lead in for my next question, because one of the things about ministry is it's very fluid. It doesn't, okay, I don't want to say it never stays the same, right? But it's full of change, especially when it comes to ministry leadership, whether that's staff, structure, board, vision, especially if you've been on a church staff for a long period of time. You've seen change, you've seen transition, you've seen new vision ideas and stuff like that. What's helped you personally to stay clear on your calling during all of those shifts?
Yeah, my calling, I don't think, was ever to a specific ministry or to a specific role. I mean, I was always in that little bit of jack of all trades, but I was always very aware of my spiritual gifts. So my key spiritual gifts are leadership, apostleship, and administration. And the apostleship is kind of a fluky one, in the fact that the way that it's lived out or manifests itself in my life is it's given me the opportunity to either work from department to department within a church or an organization, or maybe parachute into a church and help them for a season of time, but just kind of going in, assess the scene, seeing how maybe I could be helpful, put some equipping around them, and then, help it kind of go either from bad to good or good to great. So that's kind of been my mantra, no matter what role that I did. I guess kind of like that challenge. I like leaning into, kind of solving puzzles. On the other side of that, though, I learned that it was really important for me to listen and learn before I spoke into things. And for my personality, I can be super spontaneous. I can lead from the gut, tell you what I think right now. That's not always so helpful. And so for me, for Tammy, I created this 10-10-10 rule, 3-4 10s. So it's either I need to maybe pause before I speak for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours, or 10 days. Before I do that. And that's, so if I'm in a meeting with, say we're in a ministry leadership meeting and we're talking about some event we want to do, instead of just blurting out my thought, which I can do, and it's not always so helpful, I get 10 seconds, even like 10-second pause, before I do that. Sometimes it's something maybe I don't agree with. And we're in a meeting and I have to think, do I have to say that right now? Or can I think on it a little bit more and I can bring it up later? I can say, hey, can we go back to that subject we talked about a few minutes ago? I just have been thinking about it and but instead of going from my gut, which sometimes just can feel harsh, and sometimes it's not the right thing. Sometimes I really do need to think and pray for a little bit before I, say something. So the 4 times 10, 4, 10, 10 to 10, is something that helps me. So it's kind of looking at what are your gifts and how can you maximize those gifts? And for me, it's, leaning into some of the leadership and apostleship things, but also brokering some of my spontaneous responses. So
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I'm like writing fast. 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, the 410.
yeah, well, that was learned the hard way by not doing that. So
Well, I get it. I get that because I tell people all the time the apostle I really connect with the most is Peter. He just jumps. He just
yeah,
jumps and figures it out, right? So
yeah,
I understand that. But what I heard you also say was that you are very clear in what your gifts are. So it's not about um teams and organizations and visions and all that. That's important. I'm not saying that that's not important, but that doesn't affect you in your personal call, right? Because you said leadership, apostleship, and administration, um, and having a clear understanding of how that fits in
yeah.
the
I am trying to show up and use those gifts no matter what the circumstances, no matter
yeah,
what the role or no role. I mean, even as a volunteer. I mean,
yeah.
like, not even but as a volunteer. I mean, I volunteer in my own church, right now and things. And so I'm just kind of clear of how I can use my gifts in whatever little piece of the pie that I happen to be given at that time.
But don't you, okay, I'm going
Yeah,
off for a minute,
fine.
but I'm like, but don't you think that there's a confidence and not a cocky confidence, but there's because of the awareness. I call it a holy confidence or a confidence, right?
Yep.
In the gifts that he has given you. So you walk into a room differently because you know who you are, you know whose you are, you know what you bring to the table. And so you don't have to spend a lot of time or energy trying to be somebody else or fit a need that God didn't uniquely create you to do.
I mean, that's very true. I just, all I can do is try to do my very best
Yeah,
at that. And, and that is what it is. So,
that's
yeah.
good. That's good. Well, okay, so one of the things that we talk a lot, especially in Ministry Chick, because we're dealing with thousands and thousands of women worldwide who are in ministry, right? But a lot of women have repeatedly said, especially women in leadership in those spaces, that they feel unseen or underestimated. What gave you the confidence? And I'm sure we talked a little bit about that a second ago with knowing your gifts to lead boldly in some of these senior level roles, because you didn't just start off at the bottom and you did probably, knowing you worked your way up, but getting asked to be XP and then some of the other places that you've served, what gave you the confidence to lead boldly in some of these senior level roles?
There was, this is not the one thing, but this is a thing and this was many years ago, kind of during that season. And I was new to ministry and I went to a conference. It was actually a women's conference. And I sat next to a lady, she's probably in her 70s, and she was a professor at Gordon Cromwell Seminary. And she was one of the keynote speakers, and I just somehow ended up getting sat next to her. And she was very key with talking to me about my role. I think I was just probably when I was kind of just had come into the executive, pastor role. And she was very clear. She goes, you don't have to be forceful. You do not have to be bold. You don't have to overthink it. She goes, just model leadership. Be a wise leader. Don't be forceful, especially for a woman. You don't have to be overly, forceful. She goes, learn good leadership, study it, act on it, and be calm in your communication. She goes, as women, we can be very passionate, but if we're in a room with male and female people and we want to share something easier, just broker the level or the intensity of your passion as you're communicating, but you don't need to be forceful, just kind of wait to be invited into the conversation. And then she pulled out, she was just this great lady. She had this, what do you used to call, not mimeograph, the things you used to write on overhead stuff, those slides.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the film.
Yeah, she had these slides in her briefcase and she pulls them out and she goes, Tammy, I always have my slides with me. And if somebody wants to talk a little bit more about women in leadership, she goes, I always am ready to talk, but I wait to be invited to talk about it. So I don't just lead with that. But when people ask me about, since I'm a woman professor and leadership and spiritual, things like, she goes, I'm just always prepared and ready to talk about it. And I try to model it. And so it's like, so people like that who just kind of, you watch that and you think, okay, I don't have to force my way, in the door, I just kind of follow that God plan. But she was just like, I will never forget her communication to me. So yeah.
Don't you love when God drops somebody right in at the right moment that you need it, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I had a woman like that in the very first Bible study I ever taught. And I didn't know that I was going to be teaching the Bible study. I got bamboozled into attending, and then the next week I was told that I was teaching. I'm sure other people have had that happen. But there is a beautiful, wise, older woman from South Africa. And she said something in that study that I have, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
That I have carried with me ever since because it was, Melissa, when times get hard and scary, do you go to the throne or do you pick up the phone? And I was like, noted, because instinct is call a friend, pray for me, do this thing, oh my gosh, all these things, instead of like immediately going in prayer and seeking the Lord in it. And so I love that he gave you that little nugget at just the right time.
Yeah.
Which is really, really gracious of him, honestly.
Very much so.
And then that you're getting to share it with us. So you've worked in staffing, strategy, structure. I mean, your gifts, the leadership, apostleship, administration, boom, right? All areas that can be a little bit challenging for churches. What advice would you give women who are leading in spaces that feel complex and overwhelming?
Yeah, you said, you gave me that question a little bit before, and I said, the more I think about it, the more it's just that don't do it in isolation. Like complex challenges require community collaboration, wise counsel. Communities are really like what you're creating, Melissa, with Ministry Chicks. I mean, it's like we need each other. People need each other in ministry, males and females. We need each other to help us, walk through those complexities. And I'm the worst at that. Like I am definitely not necessarily good with asking for help, or I will kind of go into my own little space at times. But I know that that's not the healthiest things to do. So just not to overthink it. Years ago, I keep saying years ago, that's just how old I am, but years ago, I heard this missionary, he was speaking, and he said these words. This is probably back in the 90s too. And he said, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And like that, I have said that to myself so many times when I'm like worried about something, don't know how I'm gonna, do this thing or whatever. And it's like, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. Then the unspoken words is, God will fill that space. And so it's like, I can show up, I can do my best, I can be prayed up, read up, whatever that is that I need to do. That has been an ongoing mantra in my life for me. Somehow it gives me peace when I say those words. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm also noticing a little bit of a thread through what you're saying in each of the different questions and in your responses is this awareness of your identity in Christ, awareness of the gifts that he has given you, and awareness of this. If he invited you into this space, you don't have to prove anything to anybody, that you are there for a reason and to use your voice well in that space.
And sometimes if it's, it's from complex, So sometimes if it's complexity doesn't mean failure. Sometimes in that pile of complexity is great growth and great fulfillment and, all those, kinds of things. So, just because something's complex doesn't mean that it's not right. It's just that you could be part of the
Right. Well, I
person
mean,
itself.
let's be honest, most women that are in ministry don't have a giant ministry budget, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it
Exactly.
helps you to, it's an opportunity to be creative. I mean, how many things have women in
Mhm.
ministry got from the dollar store that have
Yes.
turned into like amazing backdrops for
Yep.
kid spaces, for VBSs, for women's events, for, your team meetings, because your budget's in and you
Totally get that.
do these things, right? So
Yep.
it forces a little bit of creativity, I guess is my point, is you have to go, okay, we don't have a lot. It's kind of the fishes and the loaves, right? You're going, I've got $10. Lord,
Yep.
what can I do for my volunteers for $10? And then you come up with somebody that bakes cookies, puts them in bags with cute little tags, and boom. It's
Hey,
a
so super quick story. I don't know if I have time. A super quick
oh, you're
story
good.
on that. So I was on the staff at Willow Creek. So brand new on the staff at Willow Creek. First year it was I came in at the top of 2001. So 9/11 happened in September of that year. And so part of my role was over staff and some different pieces like that. Well, all of a sudden, so you think Willow, big and flourishing and fluffy and bunches of people and all that, kind of thing. And so, but the reality is our budget went way down. And we were at
Yeah.
that point, we were going to have to start laying some people off. And I was in charge of the staff Christmas party. And I remember I was given like so little money. We had between that and the Willow Creek Association, which was at that time was Global Leadership Network now. But anyway, 600 and some staff, and we had hardly any money. And so, and they were used to elaborate, like big parties and things and speakers and all that kind of thing. So we ended up pulling some people together to do exactly that. Very creative. We did it was kind of a carry on, but we did hors d'oeuvre stations and things, and staff got to participate in doing that. We pulled out every old Christmas light and everything that was in any attic or storage area and decorated the place. And then we got donations. We solicited donations from the outside vendors and things, and we were basically came together and wrapped a bunch of gifts and things to give to the community kids. But there was a movie going on in the background with brunch or something, so we just, for what you could do a lot with little, but so that was my like, wow, this is Willow, it's going to be great, it's going to be good. And then it was like, okay, and you have no money and you got to do a Christmas party that makes everybody feel great and honored. And so I know that happens all the time in our ministry world. So yes.
All the time.
Yes. Yes.
All the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to segue a little bit, and I just want to talk about like looking at the future of church. What opportunities, especially because now you're doing church, you're doing staffing stuff and stuff like that. So what opportunities do you see or are you seeing for women to step into greater leadership and influence?
Yeah, I think I would almost give the same advice to a male or a female. I mean, I worked with highly complementarian churches and inside of highly complementary churches and highly egalitarian churches and everything in between. And I think it's just ultimately it's just like show up and serve. It's kind of we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but do what little things or big things or whatever you are given, do them to the best of your ability, do them well, and allow God to bless that, allow people to notice that, and the people that will want you to do more of that good thing. But you just show up and do the best with what you have. And not everybody's gifted to do every kind of role. So it's not like climbing a ladder. I mean, the kingdom, that's where the countercultural presence of the kingdom is, so different. You just show up and see what God does, with that. But don't step back, don't shy back, and don't force yourself in. So you walk through the doors that God opens. You don't kick the doors open. You walk through them and you do them well, and just allow God to bless it. And I don't want to mean to make that sound so simplistic, but sometimes it's just we just have to do what's in front of us.
I mean, we are really good at making things super overcomplicated. So sometimes we just need the simple reminder of, take, and that's why I focus so much even on what we're doing in the Ministry Check Network about taking the step, like one step forward, one small, teeny, tiny, tiny little step forward creates momentum. But I love that you said you don't kick down the door either. That's not, that's going ahead and outside of God.
Yeah.
Okay, for women who are listening, who are tired or uncertain about their next step, we're talking about steps. So they're like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm just exhausted. What encouragement would you share from your own journey? Because you've kind of been here, there, a little bit everywhere, inside, outside, around the church space. What would you share with them from your own journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think to just acknowledge that you're tired and ask for some help, lean into some other friends, some other people and things. And again, I think I said this earlier, I'm kind of the worst at that because I think I want to go it on my own, but that's not really the best is to be around other
Yeah.
people, other women who can just kind of help and support. We're all up and down at different times. And so we need someone to help raise our arms, at different, times. And so it's interesting. So I joined a walking group connected to my church this past weekend, Saturday morning walking group, women at all ages, but I'm by far the oldest one in there. But my prayer ahead of time was like, hey, God, if there's any, like, if there was just a conversation I can have with someone that might be meaningful, or I can encourage someone or whatever. And don't you know that the person I ended up walking with she's probably 25 years younger than me. But she had she's raising a stepdaughter. I raised a stepdaughter. We've just gone through some similar type things. She's not in ministry. I mean, she's newer to our church. She's been part of the church for a couple of years, came from a Catholic background, just, kind of exploring it. But we had the best conversation and we had so much unique highs and lows in common. And I think that's just like, if you're in a good spot, reach out to those who might not be in a good spot, or just make yourself available. I didn't even know she wasn't in a good spot until we ended up walking together and things. And if you're not in a good spot, she was willing to be vulnerable and share, like, this is a really tough season for us because, and that was the win-win. So somebody was up, somebody was, down a little bit, and together, God kind of knitted a unique conversation.
I love that. And there's something to be said when you're walking along with somebody, you're side by side. You're not face to face, you're not back to back, you're side by side. And I think that's a great visual of like our walk with God, but our walk with other people, right? We call it a walk.
Yeah.
So I love that you're actually physically doing that. I have a friend who has a whole ministry called The Walking Mentor. Same
That's great.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes back to what you even said a little bit earlier about just not doing this alone and making sure that you have other people. And I hear what you're saying, and a lot of it's so I'm not sure why it's hard for us to ask for help. But I do know a lot of women that are out there trying to do it on your own. And I love that I'm hearing you say, and you said, hey, I'm not actually very good at this. I'm working on this. But I know it's important is to make sure that you are connected with a group of women that can walk alongside you. And there is something to be said for walking with somebody that gets it.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tammy, we could keep going on and on and on, and I have so many personal questions, but I wanted to just kind of just take a moment. What are you doing right now? How would people connect with you if they wanted to find out more about you or what you're doing or what's next?
So I work with a group called Rooks Group. So we come along churches, helping them fill key staff roles, and also I do some board consulting through Rooks Group. So it's rooksgroup.com, RUKES group.com. And so just a lot of just walking us alongside church leaders, everything from church, we're working with a lot of church plants. So maybe they've been planted 2, 3, 4 years ago, so they're not super big. And that's really fun to help them hire some of their early staff. And then we work with some larger churches too. And I do some board work where I just come alongside boards who are, boards and senior pastors and senior staff get complex at times. And so just kind of help to be a neutral third party and helping those be more effective. So they can always, look at my emails there and things. So yeah, I love in spite of all the complexity of the local church, I still love the local church. I tried to retire for 2 months earlier this year. I think I told you that. And it was like, why am I doing this? I still love the local church. It's fun. It's hard, but it's fun. So here I am.
100% agree. I'll make sure to put your contact and info about the Rooks group all in the
Yeah.
show notes and stuff. But thank you for joining us today. And thank you for listening to the Ministry Chick Network podcast. Our heart is to help women in ministry and leadership step boldly into their God-given gifts, their calling with clarity, confidence, and courage. And if today's conversation has been an encouragement for you, would you please do us a favor and follow the podcast, share it with another woman in ministry who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper with us, make sure you check out the free Ministry Chick Network Facebook community where thousands of women, we have 26 countries represented in the Ministry Chick Facebook group. So you'll connect with women, you'll share, and you'll find encouragement each and every week, because no matter where you serve, you don't have to lead alone. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.